Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for participating in the Ontario Provincial Music Festival. And thank you to your local community festivals for recommending you. You know, these festivals are sponsored by community service clubs, usually, like the Rotary or the Kiwanis, Kinsmen, Lions, Optimist, sometimes also by other community groups or even individuals. And we're very, very fortunate to have these groups fostering and promoting the talent, musical talent in their communities. We're so fortunate in Ontario that some of these festivals have been going on for nearly 100 years. And we're grateful also to the volunteers who give so generously of their time and energy to make these festivals happen. Also grateful to the donors of scholarships and awards, which sometimes make it possible or at least eases the ability for you to go on to the next level of competition. You know, many professional musicians got their start in festivals. So who knows, there may be some of you in the class today who will go on to have a career in music. But at the very least, I hope that you all continue to enter festivals for many years to come. The class that I'm speaking about is the primary level, ages 9 and 10. This class was divided into two groups because there were 30 singers entered in this category, which is just wonderful. It was inspiring to hear the sophistication and the vocal maturity in some cases developing in such young singers. I was absolutely delighted and somewhat humbled by the level of talent that was showcased here. So thank you for your excellent musicianship and for the creativity in your presentation of these songs. There was quite a large range in the levels of repertoire being sung in this class. It is expected that some of you are just beginning your voice training and entering festivals perhaps for the first time, and others would appear to have had quite a bit more experience, and they are attempting songs which are more difficult than we would normally expect to hear at such a young age. Repertoire choices for young voices are very important. You were encouraged to prepare 2 age-appropriate contrasting songs. And again, we're very fortunate in Canada that we have easy access to the publications of the Royal Conservatory and also of Conservatory Canada. And these books are selected, the songs in these books are selected and graded according to their range, their vocal independence from the accompaniments, their storytelling appeal to young people. And generally in this class, the songs were, I would say, level 2 to level 4. So I would like to talk about the different styles of songs, which I've categorized here. And I start with up-tempo folk songs. These songs have a strong rhythmic energy, and they tell fun and sometimes fantastic stories. For example, Skyboat song, Auprès de ma blonde, Skip to my loo, My Bella Bimba, or the Jones Boys. And it was interesting, there maybe weren't as many of this style of song in the primary level as there were in the beginning level. And I wondered if that was to do with maybe you're getting even more sophisticated already in your choice of songs. But these, if you did choose one of these up-tempo folk songs, they are strophic in that there are a number of verses and refrains, and they invite a physical connection to the strong rhythms and energy in the song. And you know, they may tell a complicated extended story as well, and sometimes they have clear characters that may change during the song. like in Cara Mama, where the young girl is, won't be comforted until her mother realizes that she wants to meet the gardener. The second style that was evident in this class was the ballad folk song, where the message is more thoughtful and where the language is perhaps more poetic, like Come by the Hills, Santa Lucia, The Last Rose of Summer, She's Like the Swallow, or Mockingbird and Turn Ye to Me. Here, the singer needs to use eye focus and word painting to show that they're really thinking about the images and how to make them feel. For example, in Come by the Hills, the message is how if we pay attention to the beauty of nature, specifically the hills, the rivers, the birds, even the wind, we can forget about our worries and not think about tomorrow and just enjoy life today. What a special message that is. In pieces like She's Like the Swallow and The Last Rose of Summer, these tell sad tales of losing a loved one, but they also describe how beautiful and wonderful that person was in life. Thirdly, we have up-tempo art songs that are dramatic and character-filled and often quite funny, like I Need a Home for My Dinosaur, or Mr. Nobody, the Spider Hunter, the Pirate Song, or I'm Gonna Go and Live at Grandma's, or Computer Cat. These songs almost always require some acting, some gestures, and what I call character attitude. The characters are sometimes a bit cheeky, always very confident, and sometimes they even have little unsung bits which reinforce the story, like at the end of The Spider Hunter, a little eek when the spider lands on you, or at the end of I Need a Home for My Dinosaur, where you're anxious to get somebody to buy him. He's going cheap. So it was wonderful to watch how many of you came up with original ideas for these styles of songs. The fourth style is the art songs, which are written to create a mood or reflect upon a scene that is rather inspiring, or that invites us to wonder about nature or to imagine things. So songs like Silver Moon, Leave the World Just a Little Bit Better, or L'étoile du ciel, you want to be like that star and shine. On the back of an eagle, soaring on the back of an eagle, feeling the wind through your hair. Or Bluebird. These songs sometimes contain a comforting message as well, similar to the ballad folk songs, but they also often have a kind of magical feeling or a sense of awe and wonder. So the messages are sometimes quite deliberate, like leave the world just a little bit better. Or they talk about the power of a specific place to pull you back there, like Turn Ye to Me. So in these songs, eye focus is really important to communicate with the audience, but also to show where all these different images and ideas are. So in addition to these styles, some singers presented Italian art songs, a German lied, and one sacred song, and a couple of early music songs. So what I'm saying here is that there was a great variety of repertoire in this class, which was wonderful. All of these pieces, though, of course, present challenges that we can kind of talk about in a cohesive way. And so I'd like to talk about three things: vocal production, musicianship, and presentation. So if we start with vocal production, I'm sure many of you have already, you are already getting a low singer's breath to support your voices and to create legato phrasing. And I know you probably all have your favorite warm-up exercises for breathing. I mean, probably you do lip trills. Maybe you do them on pitches. Or a triad. And sometimes you may think, why am I doing lip trills? Well, if you're doing a lip trill, it really makes sure that you are using the breath to make the sound. Maybe some of you do humming. Again, you are working the breath energy without putting too much pressure on your voice. Maybe you do that exercise where you blow out the candle. Or maybe you add a sound to that. And you really feel that the breath is starting the sound. Two things to remember about breath: keeping your shoulders down and making sure that when you take a breath, it's quiet. One of my favorite exercises to practice a low singer's breath and how to try to develop control of that is standing tall, shoulders down. Imagine you're exhaling all the air out of your lungs, creating a vacuum. Then, by simply opening the back of your throat, drop the air in. And then, if you want to carry on with that exercise, you can measure with a certain number of exhalation counts how to sustain that breath on a pitch. So if we've exhaled and dropped it in, or you might take a phrase from a song and measure it out. Oh, come by the hills to the land where fancy is free. And that sometimes is a good way too, if you have trouble with extending your breath over a long phrase, speak that text in the tempo and rhythm that you would normally be doing it, and use this and see if you can manage to do that. Most often when you can speak it, you can probably sing it. The next important aspect of vocal production is creating that space in the back of your throat. We often use ideas like inhaling, like smelling a rose, or stifling a yawn, or maybe, oh, I've got a grapefruit in the back of my throat, right? And I'm sure you have looked in a mirror to see where that uvula, which is that little bit of flesh that dangles down, it's attached to the soft palate, you see where that is, and have experimented with finding a way to lift it. One of my silliest things is to pretend that you're an aristocratic lady or a gentleman and speaking in a very artificial way, but you're sounding as if, oh my goodness, I have a lot of space in the back of my throat. It's kind of fun to be silly sometimes. So just also remember, while we're on the subject of that space in the back of the throat, that it helps you to create space for vertical vowels. And this is something that in classical singing we talk about, making the vowels, some people say north and south, but vertical, shaped rather than spread wide way like that. And getting that space in the back of the throat also helps with that. Remember, vowels are formed really on the inside of your mouth by the position of your tongue more than they are with your front of your mouth, although you do have to gather your lips a bit for O and oo. Then we come to pitch and intonation. Sometimes young singers are challenged when they have a melody line that isn't followed by the accompaniment. Sometimes there's as we've said, there might be a lack of breath energy, and the pitch might be affected by that, so it might get a little flat at the end of a phrase. Sometimes the chin creeps up on us, creating a kink in the tube back there and really affecting the quality of the intonation. It can get kind of strained sounding and under pitch. Also be careful of scooping into a note from below, or maybe even doing a little embellishment on them in classical singing. Sometimes there are folk songs like an Italian Neapolitan song like Santa Lucia, which that is allowed, but just be cautious how much you use it. In this class, I was very impressed with the tone that is developing in many of your voices. There is consistent resonance, that kind of buzz on the sound, and often a vibrato, which is wonderful at this age. I'm sure your teachers also are encouraging you to get a clear, focused tone, working on developing what we call the head voice, for want of something else, the higher register, and bringing that clear, higher register into the middle of the voice, and blending those tones together, which is what we expect in classical singing. I did occasionally hear what we call a glottal onset, or a hard attack, which is when you start the sound usually on a word that begins with a vowel, such as I, and you start it so aggressively that you hear a little click. Just be careful of that. We do use it occasionally in English and in German, but it can become a habit that's difficult, and it is used quite frequently in contemporary commercial music and so on. So we don't use it as much in classical singing. So in your comments sheets, you will see under vocal production comments about breath management, legato phrasing, about vowel shaping, about space in the back of the throat, and about the tone, being focused or vibrant and whatever. So let's move on to musicianship. This involves honoring what is on the page, making sure the notes and the rhythms are exact, and then making decisions about dynamic markings or phrasing and tempo changes maybe. And the words need to be clear. We used to call that diction or articulation, making sure the consonants are strong and the pronunciation of different languages is as accurate as you can possibly make it. And one of the things that I applaud some of you who are singing in Italian already, and you're getting that ability to do a rolled R where necessary. Remember always that the R's in Italian, when they're between two vowels, they're flipped, and when they're everywhere else, they're rolled. Sometimes you might decide that you don't like the dynamic markings that are in the score, and that's okay sometimes, but just bear in mind that the composer of that piece of music, and maybe an editor, but usually the composer, has put a lot of thought into how he wants his song to be heard, and it may assist the emotion or whatever. So I invite you to try the dynamic contrasts as they're marked, and then if you decide you don't want them, just score them out so that we know you've made that choice. Now we come to presentation. How do you interpret and present or perform the song? And as I mentioned, some songs invite acting, gestures, lots of facial expression, depending on their style. While you are all still very young, I was very impressed at how natural and fluid and integrated your gestures were for the most part. Remember, gestures must be motivated by imagery or word painting or emotions, and not simply just put in willy-nilly. Feeling the rhythm of the song, as I mentioned before, being physically free is quite instinctive for most of you at this young age, but it's something to become consciously aware of going forward. That, okay, I'm singing this song. What does my body feel like in this song? Is it something that we want to see the rhythm of? Is it something that you're just swaying? Are you possibly using your arm accidentally by, you don't really know you're doing it, but you're swaying your arm for no reason? Facial expression can really help present the message, the mood, and the story of the song. And keep in mind, if your song has a slower tempo and seems a bit sad, try not to sing with a facial expression that really looks too tragic, as that puts the audience, makes them feel a bit ill at ease. They, oh dear, this poor person is so sad. Think of sad songs as being thoughtful or nostalgic or maybe full of longing. I like to think of sad songs as being I wish songs, something, I wish something. I focus. This can be very specific, as if you're thinking about a particular image like the moon and silver moon, and you're marking where that is with your eye focus, and then not holding it there for the entire song, obviously, bringing it down to talk to the audience about different aspects of the imagery too, but then referring back to it. It can also, eye focus can also be directly at your audience, that you're telling them a story, like in I Need a Home for My Dinosaur, or The Computer Cat, or Leave the World Just a Little Bit Better. Those are eye focuses where you really address your audience. And sometimes they might be quite deliberately focusing on one or two areas, or you might be thinking out over the tops of people and thinking generally this is a message I want to communicate. You might also have an eye focus which is a little bit more internal, a little more thoughtful and reflective, like in a song like I'm Wishing by Donna Rodenizer. Then there's posture. And this is so important. And most of you really do have very good posture, but it doesn't hurt to be reminded to keep your body well aligned. And it's so easy to find that noble position. You know, you put your arms above your head, you drop your shoulders down, you let your arms float down to your sides. There's your sternum nicely lifted, lots of room for your rib cage to expand. Arms are relaxed at your sides, not folded in front or gathered behind, and you're ready to go. Making sure you keep your knees relaxed too, that you're not locking your knees, or that your feet are a little bit apart, not too close together and not too wide apart, just so that you have a sense of being able to move in a balanced way within your posture. So another aspect of presentation, kind of personal one, it's figuring out what to wear. And I know, because I teach young people too, that this is always a big question mark. Am I going to get a new dress, or can I wear? And what am I wearing on my feet? And that gets harder for girls as they get older, I will say. But at the moment, you don't need to worry about that too much, because I didn't see any high heels anywhere. I was really happy to see that you all dressed up so nicely for your performances. This is a special event, and like a celebration, dressing up helps us feel special. And so thank you for doing that. And last but certainly not least, please remember to smile, both at the beginning of your performance, before you start, and maybe at the end, and maybe somewhere in the middle too. But we want to see that smile, because it makes you look confident. And it's like my original first teacher used to say, when I started out performing, he said, well, you just walk on the stage and you have that thought in your mind, here I am, you lucky people. And I think that's something that you might want to take into your performances as well. You might also want to bow and acknowledge your accompanist, and make sure that as you go forward with developing all these presentation ideas, that you are in character or thinking of the song as soon as the piano starts, and again continuing through any piano interludes and right to the very moment the piano finishes. Remember, people hear with their eyes. So if you look confident and poised, everyone will assume you've done a magnificent job, which in most cases you have. So thank you so much for all your effort, and for the assistance and direction of your teachers, your accompanists, and for the support of your families. It was a real pleasure to hear your performances, and I hope that you will all continue to participate in festivals for many years to come.